The worst thing about black locust is all the thorns, but it's a really good nitrogen fixer. Makes a lot of nitrogen. So it's here next to this plum tree, which is giving us plums for the first time. We had some good rain, and that means it's time to chop and drop. You don't want to chop and drop when it's dry. If you can help it, because you end up just dropping a bunch of material onto dry ground and it doesn't rot down well and it keeps it dry beneath the material. You want to chop and drop after a good soak, just like you want to mulch after a good soak, because you don't want a layer that is keeping you from letting the water into the soil, and it'll grow back again and again and again. It's planted right next to this tree to add nitrogen, to help it grow, and to be cut repeatedly. And on the other side, right here, we have a wax myrtle, and we're going to do the same thing with the wax myrtle. This wax myrtle is also a nitrogen fixer. It's a native nitrogen fixer, and it showed up here in the food forest all on its own, right here, right in the right spot to be next to this plum tree. So I've just let it go. And we can cut this again and again and again too. Add some nitrogen, add some biomass, and between the roots down below and the mulch on top, we are improving the soil in this area. And when you have poor soil, if you can grow plants on top of it, to add organic matter, to fix atmospheric nitrogen, to cool the soil, you can really start to make a big difference. So having chop and drop material in the food forest is really important. Whether you plant it on purpose, or if you just chop and drop the weeds that show up. It's pokeweed. Kind of like pokeweed as a chop and drop, but I don't eat it. All that now is going to feed this plum, which has almost made us some plums. We got one yesterday, and it's purple on the outside and kind of greenish on the inside, which is interesting. This is Tithonia diversifolia, the Mexican sunflower, which is a good nutrient accumulator. It makes a lot of biomass. It's good into zone 8. It's not ideal here. We lost about 2/3 of them this last winter, but normally it's a perennial. And we did really well with it at the border of zone 8 and 9 near the Gainesville area. But here it's subject to freezing down here in 8B, and of course we had a cold winter. But it does not fix nitrogen, but it makes a lot of biomass, and we can chop it over and over and over again. It likes all the heat. So I'm taking this, which we planted here last year, and it's grown back, and I'm feeding it to these wild plums. There are 3 little bare root wild plums that I planted in here last year, and they've come up now and they're looking really good. I just made a cluster, that way it becomes a self-pollinating cluster of plums, hopefully. This is wild lettuce. Wild lettuce can go to the plums too. Look at that. Your weeds, go to it. I'm going to take you over here and show you something. Right here, this is our Japanese persimmon tree, which gave us a nice bucket of persimmons last year. For the first time in the food forest, we got persimmons. But this is all goldenrod. And now, I know a lot of people that see goldenrod and they're like, you know, that's a useful medicinal plant. It is anti-allergy, you can make a tea out of it. This is true, but it's also a really common weed. Comes back repeatedly, and we can use it. It's just decided to show up here. It shows up in areas that you don't mow. we can take it and we can throw it to this tree as mulch, and we can convert biomass into better soil, which leads to more persimmons. So we're taking the hard work that these weeds did and feeding it to this persimmon. And of course, to just opening the space up around a tree and getting the weeds knocked down helps the tree breathe a little bit. Usually seems to grow faster after you do a chop and drop. All that material then is going to go into this tree, and of course it looks nicer. If you don't mow your grass and you just let the weeds grow for a bit in the food forest, and then you just cut whatever shows up and throw them to the trees, even if that means just hacking circles in the weeds and grass around the base of the trees, it's good, it works. I like dedicated plants that you grow, like Enterolobium, honey locust, and Tithonia, pigeon peas, sea buckthorn, you know, whatever. All those are great to deliberately plant and to start seeds from and get them going. But you've always got the weeds too. So you don't necessarily have to do that. You can even take, you know, the prunings off of your hedge and throw it at the base of your tree to feed your tree. If you want to build soil fast though, the more plants that you have available, the faster, quick biomass producing stuff that you have, it makes the soil improve a lot faster. So I've thrown bits of logs down here and mulch and other things, and now chopping and dropping the weeds like these dog fennel that have shown up here along with the goldenrod. It's just adding more to all the love that this tree has already been getting. I like to see the weeds grow. If you've got soil that's so bad that even the weeds don't want to grow, you really may have to bring in some material from elsewhere, like some mulch, etc., to start building the ground up. But if the weeds already grow, just use them. This is a little mulberry, and this dog fennel is outgrowing it. Just started itself. Now that it's nice and wet outside and it's grown nice and tall, I can make a little nest of weeds around the base of this mulberry. Oh, look at this. I've got a little buddy here. What do we have? I love it. What are you? What a handsome little creature. You look like you went wandering out of the pond last night. I don't actually want these weeds to die. I want them to grow back so I can do this again. It's a different way to think about it. You're constantly harvesting biomass, right? You're not just trying to get rid of the weeds. You're putting the weeds to work. Like if they're gonna be there and they're gonna show up, why not convert them to soil on behalf of the plants? So take the fertility from all over the place that they are putting wherever they are, whatever they're growing on, whatever minerals are in them, all this carbon, nitrogen, etc. Put it at the base of something that you love and put them to work. It's gonna flood, and that turtle knew it. When I built the South Florida Food Forest project, something like 13 years ago in my parents' backyard, soil was like beach sand. I mean, you couldn't call it soil. It was dirt. It was nothing. It was really sandy. It wouldn't hold hardly any organic matter whatsoever. And it was hot, and it was just patchy weeds back there. So my dad saved some cardboard. We laid the cardboard down in the backyard around the little fruit trees that we planted. And then we gathered all the neighbors' yard waste bins. And we took those yard waste bins full, just rolled them to the backyard, dumped them on top of the cardboard, so the cardboard acted like a weed block beneath for whatever weeds there were. And then we piled everything from palm fronds to grass clippings and whatever on top, and we made a pile that was about this tall. It was ridiculous. It was this big waste pile. It looked terrible. And then after 4 or 5 months, I went back down again to visit. We were living in North Florida at the time, and I only got to visit the food forest occasionally. And I dug underneath it, and it was just full of insect frass and lots of nice, beautiful, brown, crumbly compost. Hot conditions, beach sand everywhere else, but underneath all of that chop and drop, we had actual soil. I took pictures of it because it was so impressive, the difference between the native soil and the beautiful black organic loam that was there afterwards. So this is really an effective way, and if you can't grow enough or you don't feel like you've got enough in your yard and you got to get something going, maybe you can beg yard waste from the neighbors or go around in the fall and pick up bags of leaves and throw them in your yard. I just try to avoid anybody that has a lawn that looks too nice. If their lawn looks really nice, I assume that they spray something on it. And in that case, I don't really want to bring in any atrazine or any of that kind of thing. But if it looks like they're kind of weedy and they just had raked up a bunch of yard waste material and leaves, etc., you know, I wouldn't mind using that. I've got mimosa trees in here along with the Tithonia goldenrod, and I've just let these mimosas show up. They're an invasive in our area, but they are a nitrogen fixer, so I chop them and drop them. I have a bunch more nitrogen fixers to plant. I've been sticking a lot of these velvet beans around. Velvet beans are a really good nitrogen fixer that once you have it and you save some seeds, you can use it for years and years. This is a non-itchy type. There's a wild form that's itchy. These will give you just a tiny bit of itchiness if you put them on skin, like if you rubbed it on your arm or something. But if you're handling it, it's usually not that big a deal. This is the variety of it that is the non-itchy type. But these vines that they produce, very vigorous, and they make a lot of nitrogen beneath the ground, and they'll fill an area in and kill weeds out and improve the soil into a beautiful loam over time. So it's a good cover crop. I've already got some growing out here, scattered through. I'm seeing them start to climb over the top of other plants. You gotta be careful not to put them right next to your fruit trees though, because they will climb the fruit tree, then you end up having to cut them off with a machete repeatedly and clean the tree up so it doesn't get strangled by velvet beans. So you've got multiple options for improving the soil in a food forest. Most of them just involve dropping stuff on top of the ground. You can dedicate an area to plant with cover crops when you're first getting started. We've done that, thrown mixes of seeds on the ground. We've also just let the grass grow really tall, and then whatever weeds came, we chopped them and dropped them at the base of every fruit tree that we had. And so they had little nests of weeds around each one of those trees. We've also made islands, so you can do one bite at a time and make a little island, or a fruit tree guild, you might call it, where you sheet mulch an area and you have a few plants there and you just mow around it, but that area is sheet mulched, so you've got your cardboard layer down and whatever organic matter and mulch on top of it, so that area becomes an island of fertility. And then you can do things like we did back here and plant pumpkins at a corner of it, let it run. I've talked to you guys about getting more yield out of your food forest, so things like we threw a rotten pumpkin right here. So now it's running, and it hopefully is making us pumpkins. We've got some various watermelons kicking around here that hopefully will make us watermelons, though they're not quite as vigorous as the pumpkins are. So you just got to kind of think your way through and go, where can I get organic matter? How can I throw it on the ground? That's really most of it. And how organized or pretty you want to make it is up to you. You can do this in a more pretty and organized fashion if you want to, by throwing a bunch of stuff on the ground like I'm doing, but then getting some nice pretty mulching covering it over so your HOA doesn't get on your case or whatever. But it's not that hard. It's just getting the organic matter in the ground, and particularly having living roots in the ground. Instead of having a big patch of grass with some trees in it, you are getting the life going and just chopping and dropping and chopping and dropping, particularly when you have a nice rainy time and the soil is already moist. I've done a whole series on how to start a food forest the easy way. I've got a 6-part training over in my group. It is hours of footage from the food forest, from how to lay it out to begin with to how to maintain it, and then we visit an old food forest system, etc. So if you're interested in that, join my group, and there'll be a link to that. And of course, if you want velvet bean seeds, my daughter has those in her little Etsy shop, so I'll put a link to that below as well. Thank you for joining me. Get outside when it's raining and do some chop and drop. If you don't have rain, I hope you get some so you can chop and drop. And until next time, may your thumbs always be green.